Begin. So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this first webinar of a series of 5 underneath the Council Aquatic Centre Energy Upgrade webinar series. This is our first webinar looking at case studies and stories for electrification projects that you can learn from. We've got a fabulous lineup of councils to speak to you today, and so we look forward to taking you through these case studies. To begin with, my name is Jarrod and I'm the CEO of the Australian Alliance for Energy Productivity. I'd like to begin this webinar by acknowledging the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. And I'd like to pay my respects to the elders past, present and into the future. A little bit of housekeeping for today. The slides will be presented and distributed to you all next week, and along with a recording. We're hoping to have Q&A at the end of the presentations today, so please get ready to type the questions in that Q&A box and upvote the questions that you like, and we'll be doing our best to get to as many questions as we can. Just for a little bit of background on A2EP, we're a non-for-profit industry association focused on energy productivity, and we have a beautiful set of broad members that support our vision to double Australia's energy productivity and accelerate decarbonisation through smart and fast adoption of technologies that really help with decarbonisation. We're only a small team. I like to think we punch above our weight, and this is the team at A2EP. And joining me here today, actually on the panel, is Brendan Voss, who has a great background within HVAC and aquatic centres himself, and also Alan Pears is our technical advisor or thought leader for A2EP, essentially known as the godfather of energy efficiency in Australia, after helping things like Neighbours and energy efficiency opportunity programs come through. So that's who's joining me on the panel today. We've also got some councils I mentioned that are going to be doing presentations, and I'll get to those shortly. Just to let you all know, there's lots of resources out there to help you with your electrification journey and looking at heat pumps for aquatic centres. If you go to a2ep.org.au and go to aquatic centres, you'll find webinars, heat pump estimating tools and guides as well on implementation of heat pumps for an aquatic centre. So plenty of good free resources for you. Okay, aquatic centres. Close to my heart as growing up as swimming and spending 20 hours a week at some of your pools, and but we know that the aquatic centres are often the community's favourite asset, but also the largest energy user and CO2 emitter for councils. We know that gas prices and energy prices have been increasing a lot over the last 2 years, and we know that councils certainly want and need to decarbonise, and they really want to lead the way for their communities. However, with these rising energy costs and the need to rejuvenate this some 1,300 pools across Australia, this puts their longevity and their livelihood in the balance here. And you'll see from this nice report from Oil Lifesaving Australia that if 10% of the pools close with energy or not being able to afford to upgrade, this is $910 million lost annually of social benefits. So absolutely crucial what we're talking about here today. And it is time to upgrade. The Australian government recognises the need to support these such important pieces of community infrastructure, and have launched this $100 million fund to help improve energy efficiency and to decarbonise. And out of that, there is different opportunities, but we're really focused on the first dot point there, replacing high energy use heating in council pools with energy saving heat pumps. That's what we're here to talk to you about and support you in that. A lot of the incumbent designers, advisors, so to say, have not that much experience with how to properly and really economically implement a heat pump. And so after all the studies and work that we've done, we'd like to think we can help in this space. But overall, A2EP is extremely proud of this fund going forward after we helped the federal government with data and reasons for making this fund come about. So we're very happy to have been involved in the establishment and now further to support its rollout. And that's certainly what the federal government's looking for A2EP to do. Is we've been commissioned by them, along with the Sustainable Business Group (SBG), to do some capacity building for councils and for equipment suppliers and advisors and the like. And so there's three main steps that we had there. And the first one, of course, is to listen. And that's what we did on the 24th of October this year. We had some 14 or so councils, 28 different people come together, and we had a day of a workshop to listen to their issues and what we need to address in terms of capacity building. It was a fabulous day, and I think a lot of councils got a lot out of that, and meeting other people with similar issues and concerns as themselves as they look to upgrade their pools. So we took the learnings from that, and that's what we've used to now establish this webinar series. We chose webinars. We think that's going to be able to get the most coverage out of everyone that we or most reach that we can possibly do. So today we're talking about Aquatic Centre case studies for electrification, and we've got this is the first of a series of 3 that we're doing this year, plus 2 more next February as well. After that, the third phase that we're doing in this funded work from the Australian government is to look at getting some network meetings going, so that we can help you all learn from these new projects and do some accelerated learning there, and that will kick off next year as well. So I said these first 3, you may be asking, yeah, okay, why did you choose that? And this came from that workshop. Now, these were the results from the workshop. It was very clear, the council saying, please help us with case studies. We need to understand how it was implemented elsewhere, who's done it, what sort of technologies have they employed. And so that is the first one that we're going to address, and that's what we're doing today. A few other requests that they've asked for is things like, how do you conduct a feasibility study? What is the best practice around that? And that's going to be what we do next Thursday in the webinar then. And some other questions we had about the technologies and the best way to do the upgrade in terms of the economics. And so that's what we're having in 2 weeks from today. We're going to take you through some expert advice on that one. But yeah, so we didn't just dream this up. This has come straight from councils, and so that's where we are today. So, case studies. Let's hear from councils that have done this. And we've got 3 cases here for you today. We've got one site for inner Western Sydney from Ashfield. We've got the recently opened Brimbank Council St Albans Aquatic Centre, and the very freshly opened Northcote Aquatic Centre, and that'll be presented by Hasan and Amol together. Our very first speaker today, I would like to welcome Laura Carey to present on the Ashfield electrification project that happened a few years back. Laura's got a great background for helping us here today. She's part of the corporate sustainability team within Inner West and looking at implementing ambitious climate and renewable strategy to 2025 and their carbon neutral target. Laura has a great amount of experience with carbon accounting and reporting and electrification planning. And so with that, Laura, I think you're in a great spot to take us through your project there at Ashfield, and really looking forward to how that goes and the lessons learned from there. Laura, I'll stop sharing. I'll get you to share your screen and take us through the project.
I'll just get into presenter view. And then, oh, sorry, Jarrod.
No worries.
One more attempt. So, okay. Yeah.
Presentation going.
All good?
We're good to go. In your hands.
Okay, great. So today, as Jarrod mentioned, I will be presenting a case study on the pool heating electrification at Ashfield Aquatic Centre, which is a facility that was completed by the Inner West Council in 2020. Before I begin, I'd like to acknowledge the Gadigal and Wangal people of the Eora Nation, who are the traditional custodians of the land from which I present today, as well as the land that the Aquatic Centre resides on. I pay my respect to elders past and present, and celebrate and support the survival and cultivation of First Nations peoples' connection and to culture and connection to country despite the devastating impacts of colonisation. So a bit of an overview of the project. It was an early aquatic electrification project in the scheme of things in Australia. The project came in at just under $45 million and took around 5 years from its first inception. It opened in September 2020. The length of time for the project can be largely attributed to the fact that council amalgamated during the life of the project. So the original scope of the project, as it was commenced by Ashfield Council, was just a partial redevelopment of a 1960s original build aquatic centre. Ashfield was amalgamated with two other councils in 2016 to form the Inner West Council. Inner West took the project to construction tender. They weren't happy with what came back, so they decided to bring the project back in for a redesign. And now that they had the more resources of a merged council, they decided to make it a full knockdown rebuild. And that happened in 2017. And then, the design and construction happened to open during 2020. And I've been part of the project since the start of 2018. So I don't have full view of all the decisions made, but I will share as much as I can. Having the organizational change around the amalgamation certainly added an extra difficulty level for this kind of project in terms of the stakeholders and decision makers kind of being in flux for a lot of the project, but we managed. To give you an idea of the size of the facility, it has over 2,400 meters squared of water area in total, 6 pools, three outdoor pools, including a 50-meter, 3 indoor pools, including a spa, sauna, steam room, gym, and fitness studios, as well as a creation cafe. So it's equal biggest or the biggest aquatic centre that council has in its portfolio. The electrification. The centre is fully electric for pool heating. It includes 5 heat pumps from ranging in size from 50 kilowatts to 540 kilowatts. It's a total of 1,920 kilowatt heating capacity. The heat pumps have HFC refrigerant, 407, which has a global warming potential of 1,745. This design was done sort of very early in the electrification process. I don't think it was even really on our radar that sort of the HFC side and the global warming potential side of electrification for refrigerants was just not really on our radar. So these were the ones that were chosen. In terms of offsetting the electricity with renewables on site, there's a 250 kilowatt solar PV array, which is the largest that we could manage on the roof space available. One quirk of the facility is that it still has gas for domestic hot water, as well as cooking facilities. I can't speak to whether that was a decision that was made for cost or whether it just business as usual kind of just snuck through in terms of like certain consultants designing different aspects the aquatic centre. I can tell you from the sustainability team's point of view, we were very surprised when we did our first walkthrough of the site to see that the difficult part had been electrified, the pool heating, but not the domestic hot water. But in terms going forward, there's less for us to do in future, which is good. The results, overall, it was a very successful project. We've ended up with an energy and cost efficient aquatic centre with, you know, a very low carbon footprint relative to a gas heated aquatic centre. It's fit for purpose, and I think it's the most popular. It is the most popular aquatic centre in our LGA. Diving down into the details, so in terms of the carbon impact of the aquatic centre, at the time of this electrification project, council was not purchasing renewable electricity yet, but knew that that was the way forward for net zero. And as of July 2022, we've been on a 100% renewable electricity contract. And as of that time, the footprint for Ashfield Aquatic Centre has been about 150 tonnes of CO2 equivalent a year, and that is both the domestic hot water gas use, but there has also been HFC refrigerant leaks, probably more than we were expecting, given the youth of the centre, and that's something that we'll need to work with our maintenance contractors and the manufacturers of the heat pumps to kind of address, because we're really probably having too many leaks really for to acceptably manage that risk going forward. In terms of operations, both the aquatics operations team and our facilities maintenance team are happy with the centre. The pool keeps temperature, is sort of not, out of all the aquatic facilities we run, it's the least problematic in terms of keeping temperature, and it's helped build acceptance in our organisation for electric pools going forward. Energy use and cost overall. So the centre uses around 2,000 megawatt hours of electricity per annum and 1,300 gigajoules of gas. You can see in the first pie chart there that even with a 250 kilowatt solar array, with all of that electricity being used on site, it's still covering less than 10% of the electricity that the centre uses. So aquatic centres are very high energy users, and even what you might think is a fairly significant solar array, you're not going to, it's unlikely that you're going to get like a lot of coverage or even excess solar that you don't need. In terms of electricity cost for the centre, just want to draw attention to the role that capacity charges play in an electrified aquatic centre. So about 20% of our electricity costs are actually our peak demand charges, which is a network cost based on the highest amount of electricity you use at one point in time over 6 months. Before we had this facility, for council, the only time that we had to deal with capacity charges or had experience with capacity charges was for sports lighting. And it's just something that's important to consider in the design and also in forming the business case. Anything that you can do to manage your peak demand has a lot of opportunities for energy savings going forward. In terms of relative efficiency of the centre, we haven't done any benchmarking for Ashfield, but we have benchmarked one of our other aquatic centres. So I've done a comparison to that aquatic centre, given that they have similar facilities. So Leichhardt Park Aquatic Centre also has 6 pools, 3 indoor, 3 outdoor. It uses a mix of gas boilers, cogeneration, and 1 or 2 heat pumps for its heating and cooling. We had that benchmarked in 2021, and it was found to have an energy usage intensity of 2,531 kilowatt hours per meter squared of water area. And that was considered a medium user relative to other aquatic centres in Australia based on that usage. So if we compare the energy use at that centre to Ashfield, which I've done on this graph, you can see that Ashfield, being almost entirely electric, is using almost half, just a little bit more than half of the energy that compared to Leichhardt Park Aquatic Centre. And I've included the on-site solar in this table because I didn't want the fact that Ashfield has a large solar array to kind of skew its energy efficiency or its relative energy efficiency. So from that point of view, I think it's fair to say that it's quite efficient considering. I'll just go through a few sort of tips or keys to success based on my experience of the project, as well as going forward, the current experience I'm having with upgrading our other aquatic centres. And I think it's really important to align with your organisational goals. So electrification will have a different like the aims of electrification can be framed differently depending on your organization's priorities. For Inner West Council, sustainability is really strong. We have strong climate targets, so it's straightforward to make the case that we need to electrify in order to get to net zero. I know that other organizations might not have the same appetite, but there's certainly cost savings and a cost case to be made for electrification. Particularly, I know that our organisation has been exposed to quite significant increases in large market gas prices in the last 2 years, making Ashfield one of our more cost-effective centres to run relative to the gas ones. Feasibility, be ready with your business case, even if you don't know when the aquatic centre upgrade may be on the table. I think just start looking at the feasibility of electrification as soon as you are able within your team, because the projects can sort of come a little bit out of nowhere depending on, budget, capital constraints, and councillor priorities and things like that. So if you're ready with your business case and you've had discussions with your stakeholders before you even have decided that the organization's even decided that it's going to upgrade the aquatic centre, then it's going to make things a lot smoother. It's not the first time they've heard of it. They know that there might be a slightly higher capital cost that they need to take into account, and that's there from the get-go. The key decision makers and stakeholders within our organisation that we needed to get on board for electrification are the facilities team, as well as the aquatics operations team, as well as, I guess, the capital works projects and the executive in general. So just making sure that you are communicating with all of those stakeholders ongoing about your aims, so that it sort of becomes part of the key underpinnings of the project. And also efficiency first. So straightforward electrification, like for like, even with high temperature heat pumps, can be quite expensive. Heat pumps are more expensive than gas boilers, and even though you will get energy savings compared to the capital cost, sometimes it won't have a particularly good payback if you don't also make those design changes that reduce the amount of heating capacity that you'll need in the first instance and things like that. So building fabric improvements, thermal storage, if you can, absolutely maximize the amount of solar PV that you can get, even change the design of the building so that the roof is bigger, if that's possible, if it's early enough in the design process. So further opportunities, I think, given that Ashfield happened so early on, and like we were really at the start of our electrification journey at council, there were a few opportunities that we didn't get to, that we missed for Ashfield, that we would definitely try to incorporate into our next upgrade. And that's speaking to the things that will increase efficiency even more beyond just electrification. So high performance building envelope, thermal storage, integrating the heating and cooling. You can get some very high coefficient of performance on some of your equipment if you integrate heating and cooling. And the thing about aquatic centers is they'll always have heating all year round, even in the warmer months, the pool water still needs to be heated. So there's an opportunity for that. Obviously, fully electric rather than mostly electric would have been nice for the center. Increasing the amount of renewables you have, and also looking at as low as possible or zero global warming potential refrigerants, including natural refrigerants like CO2 or hydrocarbons. And that's it. If there's any questions.
Brilliant. Laura, thank you so much and congratulations on a great project. Pioneering, really. And it's fascinating to see how this is like a first generation electrification where some of the things are like, I wish we had done this, but that's lessons learned. And we'll see in the next two presentations how they have evolved and thinking about thermal storage and things like that as well. I'll throw to Brendan in a moment to talk about the just go through the couple of Q&A we have there. But meanwhile, Alan, and Laura, a bit of a concern about that the leaking of the refrigerant. Have you got an idea of percentage that it's leaking there? Because there's quite a few heat pumps out there with that refrigerant and probably a similar model. It's something that Alan does a lot of advice on, even domestic levels and things. You know, idea on the percentage there, Laura? What's happening?
So there's 5 heat pumps there, and over the 3 years, we've probably had, I don't know enough about it, but I'm pretty sure they have more than one circuit each, but we've had at least one leak in a circuit, maybe 4 or 5 times in the 3 years. And there's 12 kilograms of refrigerant in a circuit. So it's it can add up quickly. Yeah. And it's certainly something that we'll be looking at going forward as we'll be having more heat pumps as we electrify.
Yeah, well, neighbours actually use a 9% per annum default value for the amount of leakage. I think the other thing not many people talk about is that if you are losing refrigerant, you are also losing efficiency and heating capacity at the same time. And some numbers I did a while ago is if you've got a leak, if you've lost refrigerant for a few months, the loss of energy performance is actually a bigger climate impact if you're using grid electricity than if you than the actual refrigerant leakage. So it's a double whammy, really. So that's a very good point, Laura. Yeah, great presentation, by the way. It was good.
Thanks, Alan.
Brendan, we've got time just for 1 or 2 questions before we move on. Any questions there to throw to Laura?
There's a few there, sort of more coming in as we go, but I think probably the first one is a bit of a metric on energy usage index by condition floor area. And I think there's a question there if that's a metric that you have.
No, so we haven't done any benchmarking for Ashfield Aquatic Centre. We've been focusing on our other centres that still need upgrade. But I think based on methodology that we would actually be doing EUI for, given there's only three indoor pools, more water areas outside, I think we would probably be doing EUI based on water surface area rather than conditioned floor area.
Well, that answers two questions, because one was why not so far, or would you use a water surface area based EUI? So that answers two questions in one.
Oh, great.
The other ones are actually all around peak demand, because you mentioned peak input power. So it was, what's the power factor? If you know, that was the first question, and then have you explored any strategies in perhaps demand response or peak load shaving?
I do not know the power factor, but I might look it up and put it in the chat
Sure.
after this. And we haven't looked at any. We're in discussions about some peak demand management, possibly. But obviously our options are a little bit limited because we don't have thermal storage on site. But we will be looking at some demand management options.
Yeah.
And that might be a nice segue, Brendan. I'll come back to you after the next one. We'll take some more questions, time permitting. But this next project, I'm pretty sure, does have thermal storage. And in our third webinar, we're going to do a bit of a deep dive on the idea of load flexing or load shedding and thermal storage. But Laura, thanks for that presentation, and can't wait to see the work you guys do on Leichhardt after all these lessons learned. It's going to be a great project. So yeah.
Thanks, Jarrod.
And so that leads us to our next case study. Brimbank Council, who we actually had as our webinar. If you go back 2 years ago, we did a webinar with Ross Kingston. I think it was presented the journey that he went through to get St Albans Aquatic Centre electrified, and you could feel the pain that he went through to drag consultants and things along. But today we have David Collins, who's now will be proudly presenting that electrification results of St Albans, and David comes to us with an excellent history of working in environmental projects and water management, understanding environmental monitoring as well, and the value of that. So David, I'll get you to share your screen and we'll take us through that presentation, please.
Thanks, Jarrod, and thanks everyone for coming along today. Very pleased to come and chat about the Brimbank Aquatic and Wellness Centre, the formerly St Albans Leisure Centre. I'll also start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the lands that I'm coming from today, the Wurundjeri and the Bunurong people, and pay my respects to elders past and present and emerging. And I always, even when it's a pool, I always done a lot of work in water, and so whenever I work with traditional owners, it's often in the water space, and water is such an important part of our landscape and the history of this amazing area that we're going to talk about today. And I also acknowledge you just mentioned Ross Kingston, Jarrod. This presentation, Ross Kingston is the person I'd like to also really, really thank, because I am kind of swanning in at the last minute and sort of really not trying to take his glory, but really kind of amazed at the work that he did, because it was a real example. And you'll see it today in my talk about the persistence. I won't say nagging, I'll say persistence of Ross, because the work he did to make this happen was pretty incredible. So I'll jump into it. I've got a map here of the Brimbank City Council. It's to the west of Melbourne. It's a really diverse council. I think there's over 160 languages spoken across Brimbank. And we've got a couple of pools. One in Sunshine, which is quite an old centre, a centre that I still personally swim in a lot myself, but also, kind of always reflect, because it's got a very old gas boiler system, about how much energy it's taking per swim. I haven't done the calculations yet, but I probably should at some point. And then St Albans. The original St Albans Leisure Centre had both outdoor and indoor pools, and it was a very aging facility and was due for a complete overhaul, which is going to be really, really good because it was a very utilised and and you'll see today, still very utilised centre for the community, right in the heart of Brimbank. So to get to BAWC, as we call it, the Brimbank Aquatic and Wellness Centre, so in 2019, Council declared a climate emergency, and as part of that was to look for zero net emissions of council operations by 2030 and zero net emissions for the municipality by 2040. That 2040 target's a tricky one, working on it at the moment. We also, we have a climate emergency plan. As part of that plan too, it really looked, one of the actions was to really make sure all our facilities were investigated to be converted to electric, and which is great. And then in 2021, council joined a PPA, the Victorian Energy Collaboration, which I think has 56 out of the 70 odd councils across Victoria. So a pretty massive power purchase agreement. And then also then a similar time came along the Arena Advancing Renewables grant, and this is when Ross's ears pricked up, because we were going to go for when we were originally going to replace the St Albans Leisure Centre, it was going to be with a 5 Green Star aquatic centre, but with sort of traditional gas boiler system. So when Ross saw that opportunity, he came to our major projects team and kind of said, look, what can we change our plans, and can we go all electric? Can we do this? And they said no at first, and then he didn't take that as their final answer and kept coming back. And this was pretty amazing because council projects and many projects kind of have a certain amount of momentum, and they can be very hard to change once they get to a certain point. And this project had got to the point where it actually been it's been designed. It was kind of, we were getting close to ready to go out to market for construction, but it had been designed. And then so, in fact, I think we might have even have awarded. So we had to go back. So I don't know how, I'm not sure entirely how Ross did it, but he convinced stakeholders, did a lot of work himself to shift their thinking from this sort of like just from a purely capital cost outlay, especially because then we got the Arena grant, sort of almost make that capital cost difference negligible, and then to really think about the whole of life cost. So we got there in the end. There was some compromises with that. One is there's a backup gas boiler to give stakeholders some certainty. So there was a lot of nervousness at council around this, around would it work and what can be done. I know it had been done elsewhere in Australia a couple of times, but it hadn't been done, I guess, in Victoria in the sort of climatic conditions that we're facing. So I'm thinking, oh, is it going to work? It's going to be too cold. And the refrigerants too. I can't remember the original refrigerants we were thinking of, but we sort of compromised a little bit on the refrigerants as well too, just because of the cost of the heat pump units. These ones were a lot cheaper than the alternative that was maybe a bit more environmentally friendly. So this is some modelling that was done originally, which looks at, so all these sort of the C3, C6, C9, etc. are comparable aquatic centres in Victoria for the most part. And then the original what BAWC could look like. So it looks pretty incredible. 76% reduction in total energy usage. 52% reduction in energy that assumed gas would be converted to electric, and then 35% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions, assuming no PPA, but we have a PPA, so that's actually technically 100%, which is really good. You kind of know, this was the modelled data, and I'll note that it's not quite turned out perfectly. It's a really good story still. It's not quite as good in some ways, but I'll kind of run you through why that might be. Because like Laura said before too, things weren't perfect here. Part of some of the issues we faced, some of them was because we came in at the last minute with this converged all electric. Not everything was perfectly designed. The thermal one was really good, but not maybe as perfectly good as it could be if we designed it completely from scratch as all electric. It was sort of, there was a little bit of toing and froing to try to get some of the features in place. So some financial estimates I'm happy to share. So basically we're saving, I think, per year compared to what we were looking at, about nearly $267,000. So our payback period, I think it was going to be $1.1 million extra on the design, so it's a less than 5-year payback period, which was actually, and that's using really recent information. It's a little bit, it's actually not as much. We're not saving quite as much as we thought, and that's because but we're looking at our usage has been far higher than we thought. The usage of the pool is up by something around nearly close to 40%. So it's between 30 and 40%. So that sort of changed a little bit. I guess I haven't calculated here sort of per visitation, which is something that might be interesting to do, because the figures will look a bit different if we do per visitation, and we look at the income sort of it's generating for council, which I haven't included. So that's interesting. It's definitely a good news story, but I remember thinking like, oh, we're not quite saving as much. We're using a little bit more power than we originally expected. And yeah, but it has been a real success for the community, and it's something I kind of wanted to highlight here today. Is I feel like around St Albans and Keilor Downs, where the centre is located, it's not traditionally an area that's got a heap of great investment and great facilities. It's kind of like people get what they get, and I think that's not good enough. And so one of the things I love about the centre is the fact that it's so good for an area that has some real sort of issues with chronic health issues. Having a centre which has got such high visitation, you go in there on like a traditional time, it should be closed. It should be sort of quiet, and it's always busy, and that's thrilling for me to see. So yes, we're using a little more power than we thought, and we think it's largely due to the huge increase in usage. But that's what the pool's for. It's there to be used. The most efficient pool probably would be no pool at all, I guess. So I think so it was definitely 1 million visits happened just after 10 months of opening, which was a lot higher than what the previous centre was. So that's great to see. I think I'm probably racing through this a little bit fast. Sorry if so, but I'm happy to answer some more questions. So next step. So at the moment too, so while Ross did a lot of the hard work, one thing I've got left with is the reporting to Arena, which was a bit more intense than I thought it might be, but that's okay. They've been very helpful, and they also really want to share this story, and that's why I'm really excited to be here today to share some of what we've done. Because we're sharing these lessons learned report through Arena as well. Because it hasn't been perfect, we definitely have, there's definitely been a few things that we would have done differently. We do have thermal storage, which I haven't really talked much about today. We do have a thermal storage tank. It would have been better if we located that underground, but that was the original design, but it's above ground because of the design constraints that I mentioned earlier. And it's definitely not operating as effectively as it could be. We're not maximizing the potential at all of that thermal storage. So that's something we're really got to work on. Part of it's, we found out that the metering we put in place originally wasn't sufficient. So we're going to try and solve that issue of some of that metering, and then look at how we can be a bit smarter about how we use that thermal storage, because it's sort of this huge opportunity that kind of doesn't get used as effectively as it could. You'll see in this photo also, you've got a water slide on the outside does lose a bit of, it isn't super thermally efficient either, but it looks nice, but would we put it on the outside again? I don't know. And there's a few other things too. There's some of the ways we've done lighting in the centre too, some of the natural light. It looks great, but maybe we've let on the top. I think we could have done things a little bit differently, and maybe made the thermal envelope a little better. But we will be having there's some lessons learned reports up right now. There's going to be a live public access data portal sometime early next year, and hopefully we're going to resolve some of the monitoring issues that we're kind of facing at the moment, and and maybe sort of especially look at how we can use that thermal storage more effectively. But that's probably it. So I'm really happy to take some questions or
Thank you.
stop
Thank you,
sharing.
David.
1 second.
And I'm sure that that water slide isn't the most efficient, but in terms of productivity, it looks the most fun, I got to say. So let's not be too hard on ourselves here. There's still a lot of productivity going on there. For that lessons learnt report, you said that's available now?
Yes, I think there should be. I need to 100% double check, but there should be at least one of the lessons learned report up already. There's one, yeah. The second one, I'll have to double check with Arena. It's been submitted a while ago. We've actually got the third one coming in to them actually due next week. So that's one of my jobs for next week to finalize that.
We'll look at sending those out, or at least links to those with everyone with these slides as well. So yeah, excellent. Thanks, David. And I'm hearing you there with that that bit of thermal storage and optimization. And then Alan, how many times have we heard that one? Not enough metering. You're on mute there, Al.
Or no metering, or no sub-metering, yes. Especially with gas. No one knows how efficiently or inefficiently we use gas most of the time. Bit of a worry.
Indeed, and that gas, getting that gas, the thermal load from your gas usage, really important. We'll cover that in actually webinar number 2, that when we look at feasibility studies. So so that's super important there. Brendan, any questions coming through on the Q&A there?
There's quite a few about cost, I think. So I think the cost part of it triggered a bit of interest. So there's 2 questions around cost. One is, if the additional cost was 1.1 million when compared to gas, what does that make the total kind of thing, which may or may not be shareable. And then, was cost the only factor holding council back from looking at ammonia as the heat pump in that aspect? So probably those 2 to start. So
to answer the second one first, yes, that was my understanding. And again, there's been a lot of I've come to the project a bit late too, so if I don't answer, if I can't answer something, I'll take it on notice and find an answer for you. But yeah, my understanding was for the heat pumps, rather than go the ammonia ones, it was a cost decision. And what was the first question? Sorry.
So the uplift sort of cost, or the additional cost above gas, was 1.1 million. It was, what was the total cost of
the total cost of the centre?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can say it was 65 million approximately. Yeah.
So what was the original, I guess, the gas system price? Like,
I don't have that on hand, but I can find that out and happy to share that.
I guess it's just something that is interesting, of how much that $1.1 million is in percentage to the original cost, as a sort of rule of thumb.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah, happy to find that out, and happy to share that.
I'd suggest it may be a little bit inflated. If you look at our first webinar with Ross, you could feel his pain, that he thought he really got hurt and hammered by a variation to get that change. So it's probably not in, if that was $2 or $3 million, it's probably not indicative of the real cost if you've done that right from the start as well, just to put on that one.
Yep. There's another question here on measurement and verification. I think it says, did anyone do an M&V on Brimbank which would adjust for the increased visitors, which calculating energy use per capita does not? So is it adjusted for visitors, I guess?
It isn't at this stage, and that's something we're doing right at the moment too. So those figures that you got today actually came a little bit hot off the press from financial modelling that I got this morning. So that's a question that I have, but I haven't had a chance to get the answer to it yet.
And that the energy impact from different users, we might have some interesting data around the country because of COVID on that one. Because how much does it really relate? Each extra participant or visitor, does that really add much energy? But interesting to see how that one falls out. Al?
Yeah, well, it may be. Did you change the hours of operation? Because that might be more significant than the actual numbers of people.
It's a good point. I think the hours have changed in the original centre. I definitely know that the showers are being used a lot more than we thought. That was one thing, and there is some energy loss associated with those showers, but that's one thing. But yeah, the hours have changed. That might be a good part of it. Yeah.
There are a couple more questions. One is,
go Brendan. Sorry, yeah.
I was just going to say about the thermal storage. I think there's a few questions about what temperature Is anything? Did anyone consider geothermal? You know, there's a few questions just around thermal storage that can probably be answered collectively. So, yeah.
Don't like the temperature is around 50 degrees that the thermal storage is held at. The answer to geothermal, I don't know actually if it was considered because they're air source heat. We have air source heat pumps, which do have some issues occasionally with some colder temperatures that we get. So once it gets down to, you know, occasionally it drops down to sort of 0 or 1 degree at the side, and that has been a case when that backup gas boiler has come on. So that's something that we're looking to see what we can do about in future, because I'll be very keen for that backup boiler to at some stage disappear or be replaced with a heat pump. But it has occasionally come on, and that's been, I think, the key trigger.
Feels like I planned that question, but I didn't, because the next question was the most common theme is how often does it run and what's that gas usage look like? So.
Yeah, the gas usage has been low. I think it has come on, and it's also come on because we've had some issues with the sequencing of the when the heat pumps come on, and it hasn't always been perfect, and we've resolved those issues, but that has happened once or twice, and so I think it's around 1% or something of the total heating requirement of the pools has come from the gas boilers in the first 12 months, maybe 1.2 from memory. It's very low, but don't quote me on that, but I can find out for sure. But we're hoping that we can lower that again, because especially those sequencing issues that we've faced, that's an issue that's being looked at the moment. But the low temperatures is an interesting one. And I think that there is some solutions to that potentially on the cards, but
good.
Yep.
Thanks for that, David, and thanks, Brendan, for running the questions there. Really interesting on that EUI as well. You're just under 400, and it'd be interesting to see how that goes. And one of the things we're really going to try and encourage over this webinar series is to be locking in consultants and constructors to that EUI. They need to live up to that and deliver on that and show that they can deliver really good EUIs. But a really great improvement there that you've seen in that EUI. That's fabulous. And I think we can see now this is that's generation 2 for electrification after Ashfield. And so I think, you know, next generation, and this is common in technology, it's about 3 generations. It's like, wow, we're really starting to hit our strides now and get the most out of the technology, and that's where we're headed for sure. So that's great, David. Thank you so much. Let's move on to the latest. Is it generation 3 or maybe version 2.1 for electrification when we talk about Darebin Council's Northcote Centre? Joining us here today, we have Hasan and Amol. Hasan has a civil engineering background, and he was there throughout the project, and Amol was involved with the project management of that. Gents, if I could get you to come off mute and share your screen. Really looking forward to hear the results and how you're going at Northcote, which has just opened. It's absolutely fresh out of the blocks. So not a lot of data over the last week, but we'll go through the features and what's expected for Northcote. Gents, over to you.
Thank you, Jarrod. So once again, my name's Hasan Mani. I was the senior project manager on this particular project, and we've got here also Amol Khapre. Amol, please introduce yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Has. Yeah, my name is Amol. So I worked on the Northcote project from design to part construction, and then moved jobs, handed over to Has, and Has made sure it comes to the finish line, and he's done that very well. So that's why we're doing this presentation together. And while I'm talking, I just like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land. So I'm on the Bunurong and the Wadawurrung people's land. Thank you.
Yes, and I would like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri Waiwarong people, who are the traditional owners of the land that I'm meeting on today, and the traditional owners on the land that NARC is built on today. I recognise their continuing connection to land, water and culture. I pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. So, background on NARC. NARC is Northcote Aquatic and Recreation Centre. NARC is 50 years old. It's a council asset built in 1968 as an outdoor pool facility. It is a very important service for the local community, and in 2015, a comprehensive building condition audit for NARC was conducted. Results of that condition audit found that it was leaking significant amounts of water. The audit also concluded that NARC building condition was poor and at the end of its serviceable life. So what did NARC have previously? NARC had a 25-metre outdoor pool, a main 50-metre outdoor pool, an indoor pool, spa and activity areas, an indoor plant room, an outdoor plant room, and our changing facilities, including a creche and a gym area. Pass you over to Amol.
Yeah, thanks, Hus. So after the feasibility study was done, it was clear that we had to replace the building. When council gave us the green light, spoke to a lot of councils who had recently built aquatic centres to get their lessons learned and what worked well on their projects. That really helped put the consultant brief together. Also, Darebin was one of the first councils in the world to declare climate emergency. So our goal was clear from the start that we want to achieve the best sustainable building in aquatics, which means no gas and possibly a 6-star rating, which looked very ambitious at that stage. Also, the other things that were talked about in the previous projects about the global warming potential of the different heat pumps or whether submetering. If you're aware of those requirements, it's always good to put it in the consultant's brief from the day one, so you know what you're trying to achieve. We did a similar thing in terms of achieving the 6-star rating. Like, you can get some very easy points to get the rating, but the focus was to minimize the energy consumption and eliminate gas. So we put a lot of focus on that, even while assessing the tenders and asking the right questions to the consultants and the consultant teams of how they're going to achieve that. We also had, if you're in Victoria, there's an Office of Victorian Government Architects, which is a state run facility that can provide you with a design review on some of the projects. We really used them to, at various stages of the design, to go through and provide any feedback on all the aspects of the design, not just EST, but also people experience and the position of the building and how it would best fit with the nature and the wind and the sun and shading and everything. Other than the ESD, there was also universal design principles that we wanted to include. It wasn't mandatory, but it was just good practice to do as much as possible. So the space is welcome for people of all ages. And also recognizing the traditional owners and their input on the project, which we'll briefly cover a bit later on. And to go to the next slide, Hus, thanks. Yeah, so we approached the market. We shortlisted from the construction supply register, I think 5 or 6 consultants, which had previous experience in pools. I think pools is the second most complex building after hospitals. So we wanted to make sure that we are talking to experienced consultants. And very clear brief. When the tenders came in, we asked all of them to present their tender and how their approach is going to be. In the end, appointed Warren Mahoney Architects, and they took us through the design as per the brief. So initially, next slide, thanks, Hus. Initially, we asked them for 4 concepts, 3 different concepts, and one of the concept was to build a new building while the existing building is operational. That was costing another $12 to $15 million and had too much risk with public coming in while the construction is happening. So that didn't go ahead. But what you see on the screen is what we ended up with. So we retained the 50-meter outdoor pool. We slightly moved the location to better align with the rest of the building. The green grassy knoll is what they call it in Northcote, which people love to get some sun there. So we had to retain that. That was part of the consultation. And then there's indoor play, a seasonal outdoor play, 25-meter indoor pool, warm water pool, spa sauna. We've got cafe, back of house. And one of the things we had learned from some other aquatic centers is that people could really smell chlorine in gyms and other places that made them uncomfortable. It could be old buildings or whatever, but on purpose, we decided to separate the two buildings as a dry building and a wet building, so that 30 years down the line, you don't have that, and you have a completely separate mechanical system. One is doing the pool hall, another one is doing your dry space. And that is about design. Over to you, Hus.
Thank you, Amol. So the project timeline. In 2017, the feasibility study was conducted. In 2018, a community consultation was conducted. 2019, council award the principal design consultant to Warren and Mahoney. 2020, we did a concept design community consultation, which was conducted online due to COVID. In 2021, council awarded the design and construction contract to Kane Constructions. And in October 2021, we commenced demolition and construction. In September 2023, we achieved practical completion of the project. And in November 2023, we had our official opening. So these are live images of NARC just before opening. So starting from the top left there, we've got our indoor learn to swim pool. To the right, top right corner, we've got our indoor 25-meter pool. Bottom right corner, we've got our indoor water play area. And bottom left corner, we've got our indoor warm water pool with integrated spa, sauna, and steam room. And this is a view from our gym out onto our outdoor 50-meter pool with the grassy knoll on the right-hand side. And the bottom of the page, you'll see our outdoor water play area. So Amol touched on our Indigenous design integration throughout NARC. So council engaged Greenaway Architects and Green Shoot Consulting, who conducted the consultation with Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung Aboriginal Heritage Land Council, and we decided to integrate the following into our design and construction. So we've got the sacred kingfisher bird on the western facade, and that's shown on the bottom right corner. So the significance of the kingfisher bird is it returns to its habitat when its habitat is at equilibrium, and we believe we have brought Northcote Aquatic and Recreation Centre back to equilibrium with this reconstruction. Then we've got our Indigenous meeting point, including a Coolaman 2 conversation pit and seating area shown on the bottom left corner. We've got our splash deck on the top left corner, which mimics the nearby rivers and creeks. We've also got our indoor water play has been incorporated with some Indigenous design, the conch shell shapes, and our platypus and other animals shown on the splash deck. And we've also got feature decals throughout the whole facility, which indicates mammals found in nearby creeks. So we've got their platypus. Now this is our artist's impression of what Northcote Aquatic and Recreation Centre would look like.
I'm just going to jump in there, Hus. The artist impression, if you took a photo now, an aerial shot from the same angle, the artist impression looks the same as the building that's currently built and operation.
Thank you.
Key stakeholders. So any project, there needs to be engagement. Obviously, community was engaged during the start of the project in order to provide feedback and shape the project, whether there was interest in making this an energy efficient building. As I talked about, the Office of Victorian Government Architects, they reviewed the design at every stage and provided their comments on the different aspects that helped us improve the design as we proceeded to the next stage. Darebin's also got another aquatic center, which is called the Reservoir Leisure Center, which is run by council. We got a lot of help in terms of operational input into the design through those centers. We also met with the operators to get their input on the design about how they see the building would work, things that will not work, and we could adapt to that before we got into construction. And obviously council's internal teams. I think more than half of the council was involved on this project. Thanks, Hus.
So key steps and lessons learned. So what we've done, we've split this slide into two sections. We've got Amol, who's done his key steps and lessons learned prior to construction, and I've got my key steps and lessons learned that I've learned throughout during construction. So Amol, can you please commence and I'll follow through.
Yeah, I think overall it was a good result, so I won't get into too much detail. The smaller issues we found was like the first aid room. We forgot about the joinery in there. If you know that there's a first aid room, it's probably good to mention in the brief that it needs to come with a joinery and a sink to wash hands and a space for the fridge. In terms of ESD, I think we made no compromises throughout the design. There was some information that needed to be given to the executives and the council in order to give them comfort that the all electric system is going to work and it's not going to cost us what people were thinking it would cost us. So that was during design. Pass it over to you, Hus.
Yeah, and during construction, lessons learned, as Amol touched on, was some of the joinery was not documented correctly or was not there at all. What I've also found is the card readers issue. So during design development, council didn't have an appropriate, or let's say a security system in place for such buildings, and we had sub-consultants who designed the security system. Once we went out to construction, council developed a new security system in place, and we had to update the security system for NARC. And as a result of that, we found that council's security system was so far advanced and high spec that council cards will not be operating at this facility. So we had to update our card readers at this facility. And as such, the gym equipment, the lockers, and membership systems were operating on a different frequency to what council's frequency was. And through trial and error, we found some card readers that operated on 2 frequencies. So that's some of the design development and lessons learned that we've throughout this project. Construction-wise, we've had no hiccups throughout this project. There's been no overspend on this project. We've not been charged any increased prices. Only delays during construction we've had was due to COVID and inclement weather. And moving forward, we look forward to seeing some operational data.
Jarrod, how are we going with time?
Probably just only another minute or two left. So if there's a few highlights on the energy, you've got something on the solar, then let's go for that.
Yep. So energy-wise, we are considered the most sustainable aquatic centre in Australia. We've got 10 electric vehicle chargers, over 450 kilowatts of solar on the roof. We've got 73 bicycle parking, waste water heat recovery, and so on and so forth. We've targeted for 6-star Green Star energy rating on this particular project. We've achieved 6-star Green Star design rating, and we are 90% through our as-built construction rating. So here's an overview of our 450 kilowatts of solar at Northcote Aquatic and Recreation Centre. And we've done the calculations, and it's about 15% of NARC's total electricity usage. And we've also got our rainwater and grey water strategy. This is Darebin's first grey water treatment plant is being built at Northcote Aquatic and Recreation Centre. So we're collecting grey water, we're treating it, and we're reusing it for irrigation purposes. And same thing with our rainwater. We are collecting the rainwater, treating it, and reusing it for irrigation and toilet flushing. So here's some social procurement targets that we had and we've achieved.
Sorry, Hus.
And I'll just
I
quickly
think
go through them and we'll move forward.
there's a few other things we did with energy efficiency. So the pools are fully insulated. There's insulation around the pool in order to save the heat loss. And all those small things that makes a big difference in the long term, they were all added during design and construction.
What a project. What a project. Inspirational for what you've done here, and balancing community and First Nations in there as well. Just inspirational. Well done to Darebin City Council, City of Darebin. That's fantastic. And what a community asset. Just a question on the energy. Are you focused on an EUI at all? And are you watching that? Was that part of your original contract and brief? And are you keeping an eye on that as well?
So I'm not from the energy background. Can you explain AUI to me?
In terms of the energy use intensity, say, you may be looking at how many kilowatt hours you're using per square meter per year, that sort of thing. Maybe that wasn't part of in your area. You guys are focused on delivery of the project. Right?
Yes, I'm sure we had that information. I don't have it handy. I don't know if Hasan's got it. The focus was on getting an all-electric building and no reliance on gas. So we did eliminate the gas meter that was on site for the last 50 years. And I think you can spend a lot of money to get more benefits, but we had to find a balance to see what can be done in a cost-effective manner to get the value for money and energy savings.
And I'm sure over the next 12 months, lots of lessons learned there. Before I throw to Alan, see if there's any comments or questions there. I noticed a skylight in the middle of the indoor pool, which I hear different opinions, like, oh, a skylight, one usually not a good thing for energy efficiency if you want to do that first. Any thoughts on that one, or maybe you weren't involved in those sort of design decisions?
No, I heard both sides of the stories.
Yeah.
They're not good, they're good, they leak, they don't leak. But it's a big pool hall and we needed natural light to come in, so we're using less energy in the pool hall to light up the pool hall. The orientation didn't allow us to get a lot of northern light. So we are either relying on east or west light, which is very harsh in either summer morning peak or summer afternoon peak. Skylight is best, but I don't think we're going to have a lot of heat loss. They're well insulated and well spaced.
Gotcha. Alan?
Yeah, just to clarify, Hasan, did you say the PV was 15 or 50% of your energy use?
15%.
15, right, okay. So, yeah, well, we might do some sums to compare you with the Sydney one to get some idea of it. On the issue of skylights, one thing people might want to think about is you can now buy LED skylights that you connect to a PV panel, and they simulate the change in daylight very well. And I have friends with one in a house, and none of their visitors can imagine that it's actually not a proper skylight. So that's one way to maybe solve the debate about skylights. So that was a key thing. The other question I had really was, do you do heat recovery to preheat the air going into the heat pumps?
That's a very good question that I don't have the answer right in front of me. So,
right, because I think this is an important issue, given that the Brimbank example, they've had to use the gas boiler a bit when it's been very cold. One of the key things is that there is an enormous amount of hot, humid air available, and some people are actually using that to preheat the air going into the heat pump, which means you completely avoid the icing up problem, and you actually significantly improve the efficiency of the heat pumps as well.
Absolutely, we see that as a next generation on from thermal wheel heat recovery. We think, yeah, taking that, getting that latent heat, the humidity that is in that air effectively after a sensible heat recovery, a lot of potential there. Brendan, can you give us bring us up to date what's happening on the Q&A panel there?
Q&A. So there's this very interesting theme for this one. A lot of it's equipment oriented, I think, but what refrigerant's being used and are they air source heat pumps, I think was the first most simple question.
Yeah, they are air source heat pumps. We used a design and construct contract. So our initial design had individual heat pumps. I think there were 22 of them. But post contract award for construction, it got changed into a packaged unit heat pump. Hus would have more details on the heat pump as he worked through the construction bit.
Yeah, which I could pass on after this presentation.
Easy to pass on. Now, the other question was, and this one's come up a few times anyway in my involvement, I guess, with Aquatic centers, is how long did it take for the pools to heat up after you first started? So after the center was first started, the pools are full of cold water. Like what was that time? Or does anyone know what that was?
So we didn't want to do a shock load onto the pool structure. So we took our time in heating up our pools. We didn't want to have our thermal extraction in our slabs, which may cause issues. So we took our time in heating it. It took over a week to heat up. We're doing 1 to 2 degrees per day. Similarly, with putting the water in, we had a certain flow rate that we needed to achieve, and we tried to stay lower than that flow rate so we didn't, again, shock that pool structure.
Cool.
And I'll just add that during design, we considered a lot of scenarios. So we haven't allowed for heating all the pools all at the same time. So you heat one pool from the temperature, tap temperature, which is 12 to 13 degrees, up to the required temperature, and you put it on the maintenance load, and then the next one then goes on for heating. So it works in that way. We can't heat all the pool at the same time. Otherwise, we'll need a lot more capacity of electric heat pumps to do that one-off job.
Good. Thanks very much for that, Brendan, and for the presentations today. What I thought we'd move to now is just flash up a few projects here, because there's so much more done with electrification and heat pumps rather than just these 3 great projects we saw today. So I'm just going to give you a very quick overview of a few different projects. You will get these in the slide deck there, so you'll be able to take your time to go through these when they do hit your inbox. But here's just a couple to let you know what's going on. This is not just 3 projects. There's plenty out there, and some of these are sort of earlier generation ones, which are just focused on domestic hot water and the pool heating, maybe not the space heating. And some of them have older refrigerants as well. So here's one from Energy Smart Water at the Yarra Ranges Council, their Aquatic and Leisure Centre. This one is a series of heat pumps for domestic hot water, covering that 14 showers or so. And you can see they've got thermal storage in there as well. I'm not sure if you can see my cursor in behind the heat pumps. They've got thermal storage to handle those peak loads there as well. And it's there with the BMS integrated to the solar PV, so that they maximise the amount of local on-site use of solar PV on that one as well. So yeah, there's one that's been in there for many years in one project already. Next one to share from you, Automatic Heating have done a project here, and this is for one in Mornington Peninsula. Nice and fresh and chilly down there. So plenty of icy days, and this is still performing very well. Now here's your next generation of heat pumps where they've got CO2 being used, and this is these air sourced ones, and that's for the pool heating and space heating for the indoor pool as well. And I think there's domestic hot water involved there as well. So they have a combination of CO2 and the R410A, the older style refrigerant with high GWP. But there you go again, another project using heat pumps. I've got another one here from Automatic Heating. This one in Adelaide. So Scotch College, they've for their 25-metre pool installed some heat pumps there, CO2 once more, and you see that very nice COP of 3.9 they're getting on that the heat pumps there. So excellent result, and they've employed thermal storage as well, a nice 15,000 litre tank for thermal storage there. I did see that question come up about thermal storage and using the pool itself, and I can tell you, yes, you can have that pool go up and down by, I'll say, half a degree or 1 degree. But I can tell you, and I'm sure that aquatic centres get enough complaints. If you start going over that 27 degrees for their the lap pool, you'll start getting a few complaints. And if you go below sort of 26, 25 and a half, it's you'll get the complaints as well. So there is a little bit of a limit of what you can do there, but certainly it needs to be considered in the overall thermal storage. Next one we got here, Evo Heat, up in the Gold Coast. It's a bit warmer, a bit easier to do with heat pumps, and you'll get even higher COP. Now, this project here is actually combined with a CHP, a cogen or combined heat and power engine, still on natural gas. I don't think you'll see too many of those projects going ahead unless they can source biogas or biomethane. It's really just all about heat pumps these days. But another case where they're using these for pool heating and for the indoor warm therapy pool as well. Another one here from Evo Heat, another one again in Queensland, pool water heating using some heat pumps for the indoor pool and the outdoor pool, from a 38 kilowatt heat pump, the little one on the left there too. I think it's 200 kilowatts on the right, and that's integrated with the 70 kilowatt solar PV system there on site. I think I've got a final one here from Evo Heat. Here's another one, Richmond Valley Council, and this one was designed by Facility Design Group and installed by Hydro Care Pools in 2023. So a couple of 250 kilowatt commercial inverter heat pumps for those. So yeah, certainly is widespread. You've also got quite a few projects from Ream being done. This is a one down at Geelong. Once again, very chilly, lots of cool climate down there, but still a size to operate in that cooler climate. And so you've got over a megawatt of heating there, and this is one of these 4-pipe units, so they must be using either geothermal or using the cold that comes out of that. And this is designed to heat that pool up to a nice balmy 28 degrees. Sounds a bit warm for my lap swimming, but nice and warm for the general public. Here's a new project which is been delayed, but very interesting the way they're going to use it at North Sydney here. They'll be doing a project with heat pumps to utilise the warmth out of the harbour. So the harbour, I think, gets down to maybe 14 degrees in winter, which is still going to be better than using the ambient temperature there. And when you use this water-to-water style heat pump, you can have lower costs and much better efficiencies there. Now, it looks like they're using the R32 refrigerant for that one, which has that GWP of around about 500 or so, I think it is. So certainly a better version, but not as low GWP as the CO2 heat pumps there. But yeah, this one I think will be hopefully be finished in the next 12 months. It's been delayed a bit, but that'll be a good one to watch as well. After that, they've also done works here in South Australia. So there's a nice outdoor pool there at Marion, 800 kilowatts there. You've got a project here at Cabarita, and we had a site tour there a few weeks ago, a fabulous one that's only just opened up a few months ago. And this is a great project with 500 kilowatts of heating there for that one, and getting really good results. They're very happy with that one there at Cabarita. It's gone a long way to reducing their CO2 emissions there, that's for sure. And then here we have one in Moreton Bay Regional Council there as well, a megawatt or so of heating and BMS connectivity there too. So I think I'm going to skip a little bit quicker now, but look, they just keep coming. City of Monash and Victoria and what have you. So plenty of examples there for you. So that concludes our session for today. Next week, next Thursday at the same time, we have our second webinar, and we're going to look at trying to help you navigate what to do in terms of that feasibility template and get that feasibility study done. It's the first and most crucial step here on your journey to electrify. If you don't get the right elements in there and you find yourself having to go back, oh, we didn't investigate this, we didn't get enough data there, this is going to slow down your project. So we're going to take you through the elements of a feasibility study. To do that, we have Cara Taylor from Northern Beaches Council. She's recently had a feasibility study completed for the Manly Boy Charlton Pool. We've got Nick Yanakis from Becca and Jordan Lim from Bridgeford Group, two prominent consultants in this space, who've done lots of work around the country, and joining them is going to be Jack Donkers from Manningham City Council. So that's next week. We hope you can join us for that one. Other things to note is next Thursday we have a site tour to look at Brimbank. If you'd like to join us, go to the A2EP website and you'll see the opportunity to join us for a site tour. We're also going to go to an industrial facility to look at a low charge ammonia industrial heat pump. So you're more than welcome to join us on that one. And then coming up in 2 weeks, we'll have our third webinar looking at the economics, trying to help you get those big decisions correctly. Things like that load flexing so you can reduce that peak demand. Things like making sure you're ready to get certificates, ESCIs or VEECs if you're in New South Wales or Victoria. And also looking at options like energy as a service or heating as a service. If you don't have the capital, there's companies there that says, we'll take the project on and do the installation and just sell you heat. So we're going to look at that in a couple of weeks' time. There's also another webinar you might like to join with our A2EP, is looking at energy-based maintenance. But that's the conclusion of our webinar today. We'd very much like to thank Laura from Inner West Council, David coming from Brimbank, Amol, and Hasan as well for our presenters today. Thank you very much for sharing. Absolutely inspirational, the work that you have done. It's pioneering and it's really helping others to electrify. So many thanks to you for joining. And of course, thanks to my fellow panelists and team, Alan Pears and Brendan Voss. That's the conclusion of our webinar today. Thank you so much for joining us, and we hope you can join us next week. As we end the webinar today, you'll see this will you'll have a very quick opportunity to give us some feedback. If you'd like to direct our fourth and fifth webinar, let us know what you'd like us to investigate and report back to you on. The topics for those are still a bit open at the moment for when we'll do the webinar in February. But otherwise, thank you very much for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye-bye.